So VARC. PJ, odd, para completion, para summary. Okay. So question 9 starts with RC. So 8 VA done and total of 25 questions. I'll just go till the end and see if there are still RCs. Yeah, they are RCs till question 25. So 9 to 25 are RCs. So I'll directly go to RCs first, then come to VA. To understand the nature, history, psychology inside the heads of hunter-gatherer ancestors, sapiens had lived as foragers. Important word. Okay. Blink of an eye, tens of thousands of years where our ancestors hunted and gathered. Okay. The flourishing field of evolutionary psychology argues that many present-day characteristics are shaped during this long pre-agricultural era. Scholars are brains adapted to a life of hunting, gathering, eating habits, conflict, sexuality, result of our hunting, gathering minds, interacting with our current post-industrial environment with blah, blah, blah. The environment gives us more material resources, longer lives, but it makes us alienated, depressed, and pressured. To understand why psychologists argue we need to delve into the hunter-gatherer world that shaped us, the world that we subconsciously still inhabit. Why do for people gorge on high-calorie foods? Obesity rapidly spreading in developing countries. Why we binge? Okay. Until we consider the eating habits of our forager forebears. Savanna forests inhabited high-calorie sweets, rare, short in supply. A typical forager 30,000 years ago, access to only one type of sweet, ripe fruit. If a Stone Age woman came across a tree with figs, more sensible thing was to eat as many of them she could on the spot before the local baboon picked the tree bare. The instinct was hardwired in her genes. Okay, DNA thinks we're in the savannah. Okay, the gorging gene theory is widespread. Other theories are far more contentious. Okay, that means they are not as accepted. For example, some evolution argue that ancient foraging bands were not composed of nuclear families centered monogamous couples. Rather, foragers lived in communes devoid of private property, monogamous, and even fatherhood. In such a band, a woman could have sex and form intimate bonds with several men simultaneously, and all of the bands cooperate in parenting children. No man knew definitely showed equal to all youngsters. Such a social structure is not an Aquarian utopia. Okay, they're similar to chimpanzees and bonobos. The proponents of the ancient commune theory argue that frequent infidelities that characterize modern marriages and high rates of divorce, not to mention the cornucopia of psychological complexes from which suffer, all result forcing to live in nuclear and monogamous relations that are incompatible with their biological software. Fair enough, pretty easy to read, not very tough. The point is visible. So which of the following can be understood from the evolutionary psychologists argue that we need to delve here, right? So our options are, since history repeats itself, understanding our history. So we're not talking about history, we're talking about evolutionary psychology. Okay, eliminated. Even though our lifestyle differs from that of hunter-gatherer, at the core of our being is same as theirs. Yeah, right? That is what they have been saying. Okay, evolutionary psychology shaping us, subconsciously inhabiting, that's our core. So possible answer, since the world we live in belongs to our hunter-gatherer ancestors, we ought to learn about them. No, we're talking about evolutionary psychology and it doesn't belong. Extreme word, out. Despite the growth and development of the world, people prefer being hunters and gatherers. Absolutely not. Doesn't make any sense. Okay. So We'll go with B. All of the truing regarding the foragers are definitely true, except our forager ancestors lived in groups. They shared and had their own societal norms. Hunting and gathering was a way of life. Who lived in the pre-agricultural era. The way of life of forager is reflected in our way of life in modern world. See, the way of life is not reflected. Okay, their way of living was hunting and gathering. We are not hunters and gatherers. Okay, it is there in a DNA, right? Did not practice monogamous relationships. Yes, they did not. Okay, they lived in groups. Yeah, it's very much mentioned over here. And pre-agricultural era, hunting and gathering was what was done, which is very much mentioned here. Long pre-agricultural era, they were hunters and gatherers. Only C is our answer. Which of the following statements about high-calorie food can be inferred to be true from the passage? The foragers used to gorge on high-calorie foods because they had more food than was needed. No, they didn't have food. That is the point. It was in shortage. It's mentioned in the para. Around 200 years ago, the most sensible thing to do was consume high-calorie foods whenever. 200 years ago, that is a very wrong statement. Okay, we cannot define a timeline, right? So the gorging gene theory explains that obesity is caused by high-calorie foods. No, it doesn't explain that. The gorging gene is eating a lot. Okay. The tendency to eat is deeply imbibed. See, subconsciously still inhabit. Okay. So some of the things which is there in our evolutionary psychology and some of the things we've inherited in our DNA. So, or the mindset. So this is something which we can definitely infer. Which of the following can be inferred about the theories? The ancient commune theory rightly explains the reason for frequent infidelities in modern marriages. Okay. The ancient commune theory is more debatable than the gorging gene theory, which is widely accepted. Now, see this, guys, remember? Gorging thing is widely accepted. Other theories are contentious. So what does this mean? It is debatable and this is accepted. So this is definitely done. So I don't need to waste time in these two. I'll mark it and I'll move on. According to the passage, what can be a possible reason for high rates of divorce in modern marriages? We have inherited the genes of our ancestors who used to live in communes where monogamous relationships were the norm. Firstly, monogamous relations were not the norm. Okay. Polyamorous relationships was the norm. Devoid of monogamous. Human beings by nature cannot remain loyal to one person. No. We are not programmed to live in small groups, something that is mentioned over here. Forcing humans, incompatible with biological software. So I'll shortlist this. We still have the same mindsets who did not believe in institution of marriage. We don't know this. So I cannot give it as an answer. So I will go with C. Okay. The gorging gene theory, which of the following, if true, can undermine the credibility of the ancient commune theory? Animals which have the same genes that dictate a social live in communes devoid of monogamous relationships. Okay. We have to undermine that theory, not support it. This is supporting it, devoid. Divorce rates in modern marriages are higher in monogamous societies as compared to. So this is the whole point, right? Again, no. Living in nuclear families was not the way of life. So that is supporting the ancient commune theory. Divorces and infidelities in marriage were hardly wishes in societies 3 decades back. So if 30 years back there was no divorce and now there are divorce, so you cannot relate it to an event which happened thousands of years back. Na? So yahan bhi sahi hota. It is not right here. It is wrong in this aspect. It is right in this aspect. So there's a gap. So this is not done. So that means something happened in the last 30 years and not the last 10,000 or whatever odd years. So this is undermining my theory. Okay. Mosquitoes are pretty adaptable little creatures armed with receptors to detect odors of animal skin track down tastiest victims. But now, as Michael works reports for National Geographic, researchers found mosquitoes seem to remember certain odors. If these scents are associated with a near-death experience, like the swipe of fly sweater, they will avoid the odor in the future. The study published last month suggests that Aedes mosquito has the capacity to learn and remember for short periods. Researchers at university trained mosquitoes pairing mechanical shock created by this, with scent of certain animals like rats or chickens. The mixer simulated types of vibrations and feelings that might come from a good swatting. Each mosquito 10 trial lasting 2 minutes, each of the vibrating sessions. After 15 minutes, mosquitoes began to associate the scent of certain animals, including humans, with the shock. They began avoiding those odors, also with simulated SWAT, choosing other hosts. Mosquitoes avoided for at least 24 hours, but for some reason they never learned to avoid the scent of chickens. Christopher Potter, researcher, was not involved, tells that they are logical, plausible, or different unpleasant aspects of SWOT, such as rush feeling of wind, banging of the head close to the mosquito, could be remembered along with smell of person. Researchers also took a much deeper look into the brain of insects. Previously, dopamine neurotransmitter plays a key role in learning for other insects and animals. So, in a second experiment, the team glued genetically modified mosquitoes that lack dopamine to a device that allows them to fly in place. Okay. Researchers are exposed into scents, okay, recording the active olfactory center. Without the help of dopamine, the neurons fired less frequently with the sense, which suggests the bugs would be able to learn less. Okay. So what does that mean in the age-old battle of man versus mosquito? The learning ability makes them incredibly flexible. Knowledge that mosquito learning relies on dopamine could lead to genetic modification or insecticide that trigger the memory of avoidance, forcing the insects to avoid people. But any dopamine-based solution will not work on all mosquitoes. For instance, mosquitoes in the genus Culex, which transmit the West Nile virus, have not shown the same ability to learn to avoid humans because their main host is birds. Okay, and they feed on humans when the preferred host is not available. Because of this, they don't likely have the receptor for human scents and can't learn to avoid people. If you have different mosquitoes have different receptors for preferred hosts, which may be why Raphael's little bloodsuckers did not learn to avoid chickens. Okay, because chickens was not their host. Fine. Still, the development of such dopamine-based mosquito deterrence would be a big step. We've been using all these single compound repellents for more than 60 years and we need to move on. Until then, he suggests another strategy to take advantage of what we know about the little bloodsuckers, vigorous swatting. It could tease the little hangers to leave you alone, at least for a little bit. Which of the following does the passage not attempt to answer? Why do mosquitoes consider various aspects to be unpleasant? There was no detail on it, so let's shortlist. Can mosquitoes associate swatting with specific odors? Yes. How does the mosquito brain learn to associate specific odors? Yes. How can mosquito differentiate between various hosts? Again, yes. We are trying to identify this, but we are not seeing why are certain aspects of swatting unpleasant. There is just a little bit of mention over here. It is plausible and that's it. We are not trying to find a reason behind the same. Hence, we'll go with A as our answer, right? Which of the following can be inferred about the Aedes mosquito? Swatting near Aedes mosquito will make it wary of biting for at least 24 hours. Biting anyone, but they never learn to avoid chickens. So anyone is an extreme word. Aedes mosquito need at least 15 minutes to associate. So that was in one particular case. I cannot make it a generalized statement. Aedes mosquito can differentiate odors for at least 24 hours after being exposed sent for around 15 minutes. Again, we cannot make a generalized statement on time. We're left with D. Can remember the association between unpleasant sensations and specific odors for at least 24 hours. Yes. This makes sense. Okay. Unpleasant sensations and specific odors. Specific odors. That means they're giving the uncertainty for chickens. Hence, we'll mark D in this and move ahead. Right? Why does the author say any dopamine-based solution will not work on mosquitoes? Dopamine, key role in learning association. Okay, no. Any genus of mosquito can learn to associate specific sense with certain because of dopamine. No. Why not is the question. Dopamine-based solution relies on mosquito ability to distinguish scent of humans and ability not present in. So humans is a very generic word. Okay. We also saw the example of chickens. The effectiveness of the dopamine-based solution. Okay. Varies with time. Okay, no, with time is something I cannot really agree with. Okay. So I'm a little confused between C and D. I'll just check it once. The dopamine-based solution relies on the mosquito ability to distinguish the scent of humans, and this ability is not present in all genera of mosquitoes. So the question was about dopamine-based solution as mosquito deterrents. Okay, then talking about humans in general makes sense. We don't need to consider chickens. Okay, I think I read the question a little haste. So with varies with time is wrong. Okay, time doesn't matter. In time is not an aspect. So that's why we'll go with C over here. Aedes mosquito never learn to avoid the scents of, probably because Aedes mosquito cannot differentiate between the scent of the preferred host and the scent of some other hosts. Aedes mosquito doesn't have receptors for identifying scents of chicken. Yeah, here they have different receptors for different preferred hosts, which is why maybe riffles did not avoid chickens. So B. Which of the following can definitely be inferred about the previous research mentioned in para 5? Here. The research did not study whether insects can learn to associate the effects of swatting with scents. The research studied between dopamine and learning in mosquitoes. Did not study behavior of insects which lack dopamine. Yeah. Now see, the second experiment spoke about insects lacking dopamine. Okay. So it can be a plausible option, right? And option B is talking about the relation between dopamine and learning in mosquitoes. These did not focus on the role of dopamine in the brain of insects. So this it did because it says they play a key role. So this is out and this is out between B and C. Research did not study the relationship between dopamine and learning in mosquitoes. So in general, we were talking about insects and animals. There has been, and the second experiment is specific about mosquitoes, and my option is talking insects, right? So specific, this is generalized. I cannot do that. B is specifically talking about mosquitoes, so I have to go with B. Which of the following is true of the Culex mosquitoes and Aedes mosquito? Culex mosquito feed on birds more than they feed on humans, and inverse is the case for Aedes. So I don't know if Aedes feeds on birds, so I cannot infer this. Both Culex and Aedes mosquito can probably not avoid feeding on their respective preferred hosts. Yeah, they can avoid it. No? Culex says, no, it comes to humans. The preferred host for Culex is birds, while the preferred host for Aedes is humans. Yes, this is right. But I'll just check D. Culex mosquito cannot differentiate between individual humans, while mosquitoes can. Cannot differentiate is a very strong word. Okay. So I cannot infer this. So I'll stick to C, which seems more in line with my paragraph. Okay. Two factors can be invoked to support the idea that the opportunities of people with similar talents and abilities should not be disparate due to the effects of social lottery. First is that how someone fares in the social lottery is influenced by ongoing effects of unjust social structures. Past injustices such as racial discrimination have lingering effects on opportunities of African Americans. The distribution of initial social assets would also be influenced by the present effects of unjust inequalities in the distribution of wealth and income that are not due to racial discrimination. There is also economic exploitation facilitated by the abuse of government power and lawless coercion. The first version of the playing field concept of equal opportunity requires that something be done to counteract the opportunity limiting effects of bad luck in the social lottery, so far as these limitations result from the ongoing effects of unjust social structures. Rawls endorses this social structural view when he says that those at the same level of talent and ability, having the same willingness to use them, should have the same prospects of success regardless of their initial place in the social system. This view does not limit efforts to achieve equality of opportunity to counter the lingering effects of discrimination. It also requires efforts to counter the ongoing effects of other forms of past institutional injustice, including the unjust distribution of wealth, but the emphasis is on limitations on the opportunity that originate in unjust institutions, not in natural differences among persons. Okay. Second variant of this concept is based on a different assumption, the moral intuition that person should not have lesser opportunities as a result of factors beyond their control in the sense of being unchosen. Thomas Callan has labeled this brute luck view of equal opportunity, the contrast being between matters of brute luck, which are not within one's control at all, and misfortunes that depend on a person's choices. Persons should not have fewer opportunities due to how they fare in social lottery, example birth, regardless of whether limitations on opportunities originate in unjust situations. In the case of social lottery, the implications of the above two variants are closely congruent, at least in society with a history of unjust social institutions. Many inequalities in initial social assets will be the result of unjust social structures, but when it comes to natural lottery, the social structural view and the brute luck view have different implications. The former has no direct implications for inequalities in opportunity resulting from the natural lottery. The distribution of natural assets or endowments, equal opportunity, and brute luck view requires efforts to counteract the effects of all factors beyond one's individual control. Okay. The social structure view, like the discrimination concept of equal opportunity, limits the domain of equal opportunity to social inequalities because it is concerned only with how unjust social institutions influence a person's success in competing for desirable positions. Enlarges domain include the passage in Rawls' book, A Theory of Justice, seems to commit Rawls to the view that justice is concerned with natural as well as social inequalities. However, closer reading suggests that Rawls does not seek to address natural under the heading of equality opportunity. Instead, he appears to restrict the equality efforts to counteract the opportunity limiting effects of unjust social institutions. Okay. While noting that the operation of a distinct principle of injustice, the difference principle will do something to mitigate the effects of natural inequalities, as it requires that wealth inequalities broadly constitute work to great advantage of the worst off. Rawls may be entirely saying that it would be impermissible to base a person's entitlement to a share of social good on the mere fact that he appears to have been more fortunate in genetic lottery. That view does not commit him to the brute luck thesis that all natural inequalities require redressal. Okay. However, some passages mean that in say he regards natural inequalities as falling within the domain of justice. Other passages further lend support to the hypothesis that Rawls' conception of equal opportunity is the social structural view. Wow, this is a very, very heavy passage. Okay, let's see how the questions are. Rawls' remarks about the moral arbitrariness of natural inequalities do not signal that he endorses the brute luck conception. The view that it does not commit him to the brute luck thesis. So he is not endorsing, which is what the passage is saying also, right? He's not committing. So based on this, we can see this thing is definitely true, right? 22. According to the author, Rawls' book, A Theory of Justice, clearly established that he was a proponent of the brute luck theory. No, he wasn't. It is very much mentioned here, and that's how he answered the last statement. Rawls' writing cannot be used by either the advocates of social structural view or the brute luck view. This cannot be used as a very strong word, okay? Here, the words are maybe, might mean, blah, blah, blah. So, Rawls was concerned with unjust social institutions, and any reference to national inequalities is only incidental. I cannot say this. We cannot categorize Rawls as an advocate of brute luck thesis. Again, this very line, based on his writings mentioned in the passage. So I'll stick to what is absolutely given to me, and I'll go ahead with D. The implications of the two variants of the level playing field or equal, which have been discussed in the overlap greatly. When one considers the distribution of natural traits or endowment, here, counteracting Okay, I'll leave this question. This seems a little off to me. Which of the following is true regarding the social structural view? It focuses on limitations and individual phases. As a result, yes, this is what is given about social structural view. Okay, unjust social structures, limitation and individual phases as a result of unjust social institutions. Fair enough. All of the following are features of the brute luck mentioned in the passage. It emphasizes that in order to provide equal efforts must be made to counteract all disadvantages. Yes. It differentiates between misfortunes that results of one's own acts and one's beyond control mentioned in this very paragraph when we were talking about Thomas Colin. Yeah, here. It is unconcerned about the result of differences originating from fortunate and so this I cannot infer as of now. It highlights the fact that unjust are not the only cause for unfair distribution. Yeah, it says no, that our what we do can also lead to failure as another cause. So I'll go with C, although I'm not very sure, but I'll stick to it. What is this? Parajumble. Fine. Regime sanctioned thugs try to fight back, but lose their nerve in the face of popular intransigence and global news coverage. The people mass in the main square. Okay. But turfing out an autocrat, but is the contrast. The world applauds the collapse of the regime and offers to help build a democracy. The new regime stumbles. Okay. So people mass in the main square. Regime sanctioned thugs try to fight back but lose their nerve in the face of popular interest and global news coverage. So people are collecting to protest. 2 is a fight back. Okay. Now democracy. So 4 and 3 have a pair. Okay. The world applauds the collapse of a regime, right? They lose their nerve, collapse, that is a pair. Help to build a democracy, but turfing out an autocrat, that is collapsing, is more easy than setting up democracy. So 4 and 3 are a pair. Sorry, I wrote 3 first. I should have written 4 first, right? 3, and then we are left with 5 only. So logically, if we go, it's 2, 1, 3, 4, 2, 1, 4, 3, 5. Okay. Governments have steadily extended entitlements over decades, allowing dangerous levels of debt to develop, and politicians came to believe that they had abolished boom bust cycles and tamed risk. The crisis turned the Washington consensus. The crisis. So 3 was before 2, 3 defines it. The damage the financial crisis of 2007 did was psychological as well as financial. The financial crisis. It revealed fundamental weaknesses in the West political systems, undermining self-confidence that had been one of their greatest assets. 3-5 is a pair. Self-confidence. Government has steadily extended entitlement over decades, allowing danger level to debt to overdown. Politicians came to believe that so self-confidence, that's why they had belief, so 3-1-5 is a pair till now. Now between 4 and 2. Many people became disillusioned with the workings of political systems, particularly when government bailed out, blah, blah, blah. The crisis turned Washington into a term of reproach across the emerging world. So the flow 2 is like a conclusion, right, to the whole crisis thing. So that's why 3-5-1-4-2 makes more logical sense. So identify the opening as a general statement and move to specific. That's how we usually go in parajumbles. Oh God, these are huge. So the center needs to be congratulated on keeping the increase in MSP for food grains. This was done despite the political. This was done. So what was done? So 1 and 2 seem a pair. Okay, what the center did. Right, we got one pair. However, the center has displayed maturity in sticking to the path with prospects are deficient. Sound economics seldom makes for saleable politics. With the prospects of a deficient, it would have been tempting to step up MSPs as a political gesture. As a gesture, and the center has displayed maturity in sticking to the path. So I feel 4 and 3 are a pair, and that leaves with 1, 5. So it is 5, 4, 3, 1, 2 or 5, 1, 2, 4, 3. Because 5 is a generalized statement, which seems like the first statement. Sounds politics seldom makes for saleable politics. So the center needs to be congratulated, keeping the minimum, keeping the increase in MSP for food grains relatively modest. This was done despite this. With the prospects of definite monsoon, it would have been tempting to step up MSPs. However, the center, so I think 5, 1, 2, 4, 3 is more logical than 5, 4, 3, 1, 2. So 5, 1, 2. Odd one out. Law enforcement officials from America patrol international waters in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific hope to seize cocaine shipments before they reach their intended destinations. Most of the world's supply of cocaine comes from just 3 South American countries, Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. Nevertheless, Colombia may have reclaimed its status as the foremost cocaine producing nation. So most of the world's supply comes from these, much of it headed for the United States and Europe. When they succeed in nabbing smugglers, who will succeed? Law enforcement officials. So 5 and 1 are also a pair. 2 and 4 and 5 and 1 pair. Then automatically odd one is 3. So in over here, the approach that really works is finding the pairs. Once you find 2 pairs, the one that is left is the odd one out. But is a contrast. A silk rail between East and West will also require better relations. By April, when the new Trans-Kazakh railway fully opens, executives in Iran hope to have cut the journey. We are becoming the global hub, bordered one minister. The 10,500 kilometers from UV city in eastern China through Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan was sluggish. But when the first Chinese train pulled into Tehran station after 14, Iranian officials hailed a great leap forward. So Iranian officials ministered, we are becoming the global hub between East and West. By April, executives in Iran. So 513 are, 413 are definitely related, and 5 is the starting statement for it. Okay. So that leaves us with 2. But microorganisms were not domesticated until very recently, primarily because the man did not know of their existence. By the year 2020, the pressure of food continues to intensify. Biologists will be growing microorganisms for use as animal feed and eventually human food. Our ancestors domesticated various plants and trees in the prehistoric class. Here we harness life in its primitive forms, just as we harness the horse. Today he does, and they already are used in large-scale production, blah, blah, blah. Our ancestors domesticated various plant and animal species in the prehistoric past, but microorganisms were not domesticated until very recently, primarily because they didn't know. Okay, man didn't know. Today, man knows. So 3, 5. By the year 2020, again talking about microorganisms. Harnessed horse, primitive forms, again, no relation. So we'll go with 4. Error completion is something not in my domain, so I'll just focus here. Foreign investment is a part of globalization. According to the Washington Consensus, growth occurs through liberalization, freeing up markets, privatization, liberalization, micro stability, as opposed to create a climate to attract investment, including from abroad. This investment creates growth. Foreign business brings with it a technical expertise and access to foreign markets, creating new employment possibilities. Foreign companies also have access to sources of finance, especially important in those developing countries when local financial institutions are weak. Foreign direct investment has played an important role in many successful development stories in Singapore, Malaysia, and China. Foreign investment is very important for globalization and it encourages opening up economies. Privatization, liberalization, macro stability invite foreign local investment. So, okay, foreign trade is highly advantageous in terms of creating opportunity, developing sources of funds that are made available entry to foreign markets. Foreign has promoted development. So this makes it very specific, while the last line is not this specific. Promoted development has played an important role in many successful development stories. Okay, here it is saying that only promoted development, which is not right when we're looking at para summary. We need to stick to the vastness of things. Yeah. Foreign investment encourages liberalization. Okay. Privatization, liberalization, macro attract foreign local capital, entail fast economic for much needed funds to weak finance, helps provide infrastructure. We don't know the word infrastructure. We don't know. It's not there in the passage. I cannot write such a word then in my options. Foreign investment is indispensable to globalization and open economy encourages growth. Factors like privatization, liberalization, and micro stability help create an environment conducive to inland and foreign investment. Foreign businesses open new vistas, opportunities. Multinationals bring the much needed capital for the weak banking sector in developing nations, crucial for development in many countries. So nothing out of line, but I'll check D. Globalization is a result of foreign investment. Is it? It's a key part. Globalization is not the result, right? The tone here itself is wrong of what is mentioned and what is given. So we eliminate this and we stick to the most inline option, which is C for us. Let's give this a try once. The implication of the two variants of level playing concept overlap. Okay. The first version requires that something be done to counteract the opportunity limiting effects of bad luck and social lottery. And the second, different assumption. Moral intuition that person should not have less of it as a result of factors. When one considers a society with okay, I feel it's about the evaluation. So I'll just go with it. So it's only one and para completion not really my cup of tea. So I'll go ahead submitting the paper. Okay, we got one incorrect. Fine. Thank you.